So artificial intelligence has, of course, been radically altering the landscape of digital media experience in subtle and not so subtle ways. Hi, I'm Dr. Boyd Branch. I am a researcher at Coventry University, and I run the master's course in augmented and virtual reality. It was interesting working with different LLMs before OpenAI launched ChatGPT. I was working with Dr. Piotr Murawski from Google's DeepMind to develop the show Improbotics, and he was creating his own LLMs for us to work with, very basic sort of chatbots that were taught on subtitles from movies and television. And most of the interactions were pretty bad. The chatbots really couldn't hold interesting, long, deep, meaningful conversations. They could simulate a kind of response, but it was always the humor in performing with them was a result of the absurdity of the kind of response that we would get. Flash forward to post-pandemic, as OpenAI releases ChatGPT, this revolution takes place where not only are these chatbots able to meaningfully dialogue with us, but generative AI itself begins to open up the possibility of just speaking what you want to see and hear and experience in these digital spaces. And so it's altered sort of the surface of our digital media experience in obvious ways, in that, well, we can generate content now without the traditional sort of technical skills that were so important to digital media art before. But also, even how the digital tools that we traditionally use to make content, from video editing to Photoshop, are now using, of course, artificial intelligence to speed up tasks, to have even generative fill inside of those tool sets. And so even our aesthetic, even if you want to work as a digital media artist just purely from your own imagination, it's becoming more difficult now to create content that's not influenced aesthetically by the aesthetics that are emerging from artificial intelligence. The cultural notion of AI is changing how we think about, I think, ourselves. And then the technology itself is changing the tools we use, and the outputs are changing what we see and what we can make. So I feel like it's operating on so many different levels that it's almost impossible to understand what that impact really is. We just know that there is a sort of before the machine and after the machine, and we are now definitely post-AI.
I worked as a copywriter for a couple of years, and I've always been very drawn to storytelling. My grandfather was a journalist. I've been writing stories since I was a kid. Then again, working as a copywriter, I've always liked the written word. And with this creation of these new models like ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Claude, whatever, a lot of people started raising this panic. It was a moral panic, an ethical panic, and also an economic panic in a way, because people were saying that, oh, we're going to be out of jobs, right? The creative industry is dying since, a machine can write a story for you, so why would you need to write a story yourself? I was not necessarily buying into the moral panic, because these kinds of panics happen every time there's a new innovation going on there. Like, when the first synthesizer was invented, it was not allowed in the Royal Opera Hall because people thought that, it was kind of like cheating. So hence, I've got this question of, well, instead of having a robot write a story for myself, how can I use the robot to convey a story through it and use it as a tool that it's meant to be?
I see it as an expression, artistic expression, but it's also quite experimental, I think. I think both apply.
Can you kind of elaborate on how they both apply?
Well, for me, it was experimental because I couldn't possibly predict. So part of my practice was looking at chance as well. So it all happened quite, like I said, it all happened quite organically. I was looking at chance and how sequences of things happen. And I had to consistently remind myself, I cannot possibly predict ever what the public are going to want to generate, in the same way that you can't predict what the AI itself is going to generate, because it's just sort of exploded, hasn't it? Like you see it in all sorts of adverts, whether it's relevant or not. I've seen it in that that KFC advert where it's like, chicken's real, and it's not relevant, but everyone seems to be jumping on the bandwagon.
Everything that we're doing artistically, culturally requires other people. There is no art by yourself. And so this is my other challenge with purely generative art. If you're just making an image that you want because you've expressed that you're not going through any sort of social process, it's sort of robbed of I think something of real sort of value as an art form. And so creating pro-social kinds of experiences is connected to the importance of doing live works where it requires people to deal with the reality of an unpredictable connection between ourselves as people, as humans in a volatile state. This world is volatile. We don't know from moment to moment what's going to happen. And so work that lives in that space, I think, is really, really important.
I read a really interesting book, actually. It's called Benny the Blue Whale. It's written by a writer who decided to play around with a chatbot and see where that would take. And he has published his interactions with ChatGPT. And if you look at other chatbots out there that are specifically focused on this storytelling aspect, a lot of them the chat is telling you a story. For example, there's Character AI, where you get to roleplay with a character. There's Dungeon AI, I believe it's called. It's also a website where you kind of go through a story and the story generates as you go through it. Meanwhile, I have not really seen, from all of my research, I have not seen anyone actually use it to tell their own story. And that's what I think more people should be doing, frankly speaking. I think they should use it as this tool, not to rely on it to do everything for them, because it's fallible. Like, it's a machine. It will not replace people, at least not in the current state, and I don't believe it ever will, because it does produce very mediocre results, because again, it just looks for the next statistically probable thing, which is how it works. It's language machine. It's not actually necessarily intelligent.
People are focusing on what content it creates and the quality of the content it creates. Well, I don't think that's important. I think it's the technology itself and how it can enhance what you're doing is important. It's made me look at things completely differently. I think I never really appreciated technology. I appreciated the aesthetics of early technology, but I never really appreciated technology up until this point and how conceptual it can be. I thought it was all quite binary, but it's not, and it can be quite conceptual. And I like that, and I think it's really exciting.
It's very important that we work, every student doing any kind of research, any kind of project needs to understand how to use AI tools and what to use them for. I think the guiding principle in using them is to think about, well, what is it that you really want to achieve? If you want to be a filmmaker, if you want to tell stories, there's nothing wrong with using artificial intelligence to tell your story. But if you want to be a cinematographer and you're just having a generative AI make your cinematography, then you're not very competitive. If you can do, if it's an easy task, it's an easy task for anyone. So if you want to emerge, if you want to be excellent in a field, you have to do something that few people can do. That's just how competition works.